I practiced NoFap for 3 years, from the ages of 17 to 20. During these 3 years, I went through and successfully survived 4 secret phases of NoFap that, in my opinion, people rarely talk about, which allowed me to transform myself from an insecure, lost, emotionally unstable individual to a confident, focused, and most important, emotionally stable individual. So if you want to know how to successfully survive these 4 secret phases you're going to experience on your NoFap journey, make sure to watch till the end. So the first phase you're going to experience on your NoFap journey, and in my opinion the hardest phase, is called the yo-yo phase. This is the phase where, let's just say, you're not going to have the most fun. Mainly because this is the phase where you're constantly going to be yo-yoing back and forth from the person you actually want to be, the person who's not beating his meat 24/7, to the person you are now that's probably beating his meat 24/7. In other words, this is the recovery phase. And the hardest part about this phase is that sometimes you're going to be experiencing moments of the next phase, which in my opinion is the second best phase of NoFap and is significantly better than the current phase you're going to be in. But because in this phase you're constantly yo-yoing back and forth, the experience of the next phase is usually short-lived. And each time you fall back into your old habits after just experiencing what it was like to be in the next phase, it really does suck. To be honest, man, I was stuck in this phase for literal years before I was able to get into the next phase consistently. And I absolutely hated the fact that I couldn't break this addiction. I tried so many different things over the years to break my addiction. I mean, I tried affirmations, identifying my habits, switching up my triggers, trying to distract myself. I mean, I even tried throwing in some prayer here and there. Now, I'm not saying that these things didn't help me at all, and I definitely believe if you try them, they'll help you too. But the one thing that I can say 100% helped me break my addiction and finally move into the next phase was learning exactly what porn was doing to my body, how it was affecting my current life, how it would probably affect my future life, and how it was preventing me from becoming the man I knew I wanted to become. This was the exact video I watched back in the day that helped me cure my porn addiction. It's honestly super old now, so it might not even be the most modern or up-to-date in terms of information, but this is what helped me, and I'm hoping it'll help some of you guys as well. Once I watched this video and learned exactly what porn was doing to my experience of life, and how it was preventing me from becoming the person I wanted to become, in all honesty, all my urges drastically reduced. And when I did have an urge, it was so minor that I could usually just end up ignoring it. Although getting past this phase of NoFap is the hardest part, it's almost like a rite of passage, because if you can get past this part, you're gonna start experiencing so many potential benefits. The main one being that you've started to gain control over your sexual urges, and that is priceless. Now, if you have any brief questions, put them in the comments below. And if you're really serious and you want me to personally help you out with any issues you might be experiencing in your life, sign up for one-on-one coaching with me. Also, make sure to download my free ebook that I made to specifically help you navigate and understand the 10 secret stages of success you'll 100% be going through on the way to achieving your goals. You can find the links to both of these in the description and the pinned comments down below. Now, moving on to, in my opinion, the second best phase of NoFap. This phase is what I like to call the Super Saiyan phase. Realistically, it'll probably take you around 1.5 to 3.5 months to get here. And the reason I like to call this the Super Saiyan phase is pretty self-explanatory, because on this phase, you basically feel like a Super Saiyan. First of all, to even get to this phase, you have to do something most men on the planet aren't even capable of doing: controlling their sexual urges, overcoming their body, conquering an addiction. Just that alone gives you a psychological high and edge over other men that you will feel and other people will feel as well. This is one of the reasons why there's so many videos of people saying NoFap increases confidence, and how women can actually sense a guy who's practicing NoFap. And there's definitely some spiritual components to NoFap that contribute to this. But just from a practical standpoint, by the time you reach this phase, you'll start feeling more confident, and that is attractive to guys and girls. And on top of this increased confidence, you're going to be experiencing a ton of increased energy. In fact, you're gonna have so much extra energy, you're not gonna know what to do with it. That's why my main tip that I'm gonna give you for this phase is to find an outlet, or honestly, better yet, find multiple outlets to use this extra energy on. When I finally got into this phase after years of yo-yoing back and forth, I had fortunately already incorporated multiple outlets during that yo-yo phase. So personally for me, when I was in this phase, I got into self-development. I started going to the gym consistently. I started working on my social skills. I started learning about psychology and how to do shadow work, so I could actually learn how to heal my traumas on my own. Honestly, I was doing a lot, but the reason I was able to do a lot was because I had so much extra energy on NoFap. And what I experienced during this phase is that when I didn't use all that extra energy on something, I'd actually start getting frustrated, miserable, and antsy. And to be honest, it was a weird feeling that I'm glad I don't have to experience anymore. The best way I could describe it was like getting blue balls all over your body. Yeah, it's not fun. And that's why I'm really trying to stress the importance to you guys that you need to develop multiple outlets while you're in this phase. And not even just for this phase. For the whole duration of you practicing NoFap, you're gonna need to be using this extra energy on multiple different outlets. The danger for this phase is once you actually get to this phase, you're gonna be over the moon. You're gonna be experiencing all the benefits you've heard about. And because you start experiencing these, it's so easy to start coasting. But I'm telling you, that's the last thing you want to do. The truth is, you need a plan for this phase. You need a plan of where you're going to direct your energy. Because if you don't have a plan, guess what? For one, you're going to feel frustrated and you're going to feel that feeling of blue balls that I felt, which trust me, you don't want to feel. And two, those demons you fought off with blood, sweat, and tears are gonna start to come back. And this time, the urges are gonna be so much worse and so much harder to resist because of all your extra energy and all the extra free time you now have from not beating your meat 24/7. And I know to some of you, this phase might seem a little scary, but it's honestly not. It's actually really fun, as long as you know how to properly navigate it. And once you make it to this phase, cherish it, because you only get to experience it once. It's like the honeymoon phase of a new relationship. And if you do the things I told you in this section of the video, you're going to have an amazing chance of moving on to the next phase of NoFap. Now, this next phase, I like to call limbo. Why do I call this phase limbo? Well, by the time you get to this phase, you're gonna be pretty seasoned at practicing NoFap. Someone who actually gets to this phase will probably have been successfully practicing for around 5 to 6 months. And basically because you've been practicing so long now, you're used to it. If phase 2 was the honeymoon phase of the relationship, phase 3 is the reality check. And you'll know you're in this phase when you start to feel like practicing NoFap is actually pretty easy, almost effortless. You still get urges in this phase, but they are much more muted, and the frequency of them is much rarer compared to how they were before. Sometimes you don't even notice you're getting the urges because your automatic response has just been to ignore them. Another key characteristic of this phase is you being much more clear-minded, and you've likely implemented several positive outlets that you've been using your extra energy on throughout these past months. As a bonus, you've also probably gotten several compliments from people you might know or random people saying how good you look or how different you seem. And some of you might even be seeing someone or multiple people by now. Limbo phase is a great phase to be in, but it can be a bit boring because by this time you know what to expect. The newness of practicing NoFap is gone. But for some of you, this is exactly what you'd want. This is the phase where you'll be grinding towards specific goals you decided you wanted to move towards while on NoFap. Remember how I said that in phase 2, I got into self-development? Well, by this phase, that self-development had increased so much that I was forming a vision for my entire life. In fact, that very same vision I started drafting like a decade ago is the very same vision that I've used and have been continually using to this day. Back then, I knew I wanted an amazing body, I knew I wanted an amazing relationship, financial freedom, a thriving YouTube channel where I can actually help people become their best selves. And that's exactly what I'm doing today. Although limbo might not be the most exciting phase, it's usually the first phase where you're actually going to be able to understand what you want out of NoFap because of the clear-mindedness that is a key characteristic of this phase, and also the fact that you've experienced what NoFap is like and how to handle it. And if you actually make it to this phase, the only thing that you need to look out for at this point is boredom, because that feeling of boredom might make you feel like maybe NoFap isn't worth it. Maybe what I'm doing here isn't that great, and maybe I should just go back to beating my meat 24/7. But the good thing is, because you've been practicing for so long now, and you've experienced what it's like to actually overcome your addiction, It's very easy to dismiss this feeling, and by continuing to do what you're doing and dismiss that feeling, you finally get to move on to, in my opinion, the best phase of NoFap. Now, I like to call this phase the mastery phase. I like to call it this because by this point, you've pretty much mastered NoFap. And to even get to this point, you've probably been practicing for well over a year. Very few people will ever make it here. But if you do make it to this phase, what you can expect is NoFap becoming a lifestyle for you. In fact, at this point, you probably don't even realize you're doing NoFap anymore. The milestones of not fapping for X amount of days or months is meaningless to you now. Not fapping is just a normal thing to do now. And now, whenever you hear someone talking about NoFap or talking about a porn addiction, it almost feels weird to you now. And that past addicted version of you feels like a dream. By this point, you've also probably become a way different person than how you were before when you were addicted to porn and not practicing NoFap. Now you're used to how retaining your seed feels. The urges to watch porn or fap is pretty much non-existent. And that initial boost of confidence that you got in phase 2 of NoFap has pretty much internalized into who you are now. And you likely feel that confidence wherever you go. Oh, and if you struggle with anxiety and depression, they're probably gone as well. And your life is likely in an overall much better spot. Personally for me, I didn't even realize when I got to this phase, and you likely won't even realize it either. Because as I said before, by the time you get to this phase, you don't even think about NoFap anymore. This is just normal to you. It's as normal as you getting out of bed. It's as normal as you putting your socks on. You don't think about these things, you just do them. There's nothing exceptional or special about it anymore. And this is exactly why it's the best phase. Because in this phase, nothing is holding you back. You've learned how to successfully navigate, survive, and overcome all the obstacles NoFap has thrown at you. And now you're just left with the benefits from NoFap that you can use in any way you want to improve your life. And that's exactly what I did. After a year of practicing and mastering NoFap, I loved it so much that I continued practicing it for 2 more years. And during this time, I was able to use it to transmute so much negative energy in my life to positive energy, which has directly helped me get to where I am today. And although you guys obviously can't see the transformation, just to give you some perspective, I started off in the hood, in a single parent household with an emotionally unavailable mother. So just off the bat, I had no real healthy parental figures to learn from or model behavior off of. I also had addictive tendencies, the main one obviously being porn, and I also had a severe lack of self-worth that manifested in extreme anxiety. And I mean extreme. Sometimes I would literally feel like my heart was gonna beat out of my chest. On top of that, I had a very hard time connecting with others because my parents never connected with me. Also had depression and blah blah blah. That's just the tip of the iceberg, but you get it. The whole point of me saying all that is because the good news is that through NoFap and conscious, consistent effort, I was able to overcome all of that in just a couple of years. Most people won't overcome that in a whole lifetime. Really think about that. And also think about the fact that you can do the exact same thing. That's how powerful NoFap can be for you, if you want to use it that way. And if you do want to use it that way, I recommend you watch this video where I walk you through a 5-step guide to becoming your best self on NoFap and semen retention.